The day I inherited my father's billion-dollar company.
Miss Carter, the board is waiting for you.
Let's get this over with.
An elderly janitor begged me not to accept it.
May I have just a moment? Please, it's important.
He looked over his shoulder, grabbed my arm, and whispered,
Ma'am, whatever happens in that meeting, don't sign anything.
Before I could ask why, security dragged him away. As the elevator doors closed, he shouted one final warning. Find the red ledger. 30 seconds later, 12 executives stood and applauded my arrival. But one of them had already murdered my father, and they thought I would never discover the truth. My name is Olivia Carter. Until 3 days ago, I believed my father died from a heart attack. That's what everyone told me. That's what the newspapers reported. That's what the official records said. But secrets have a strange way of surviving, especially inside billion-dollar companies. Over the next few days, I would discover hidden bank accounts, missing employees, destroyed evidence, a woman who had disappeared without a trace, and a handwritten ledger that someone had risked their life to hide. Every answer uncovered an even darker question. Because the truth wasn't just about my father's death. It was about a secret powerful enough to destroy one of the richest families in America and expose the one person no one ever suspected. Before we dive in, if you enjoy psychological mysteries filled with shocking twists and impossible secrets, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next story. Leave a like if you're already trying to figure out who you can trust, and tell me in the comments. Would you have listened to the janitor or signed the papers anyway? Now, let's begin. People always assume that growing up as the daughter of a billionaire means your life must have been perfect. Mine wasn't. The newspapers loved calling my father, Richard Carter, one of the most brilliant businessmen in America. They praised his discipline, his vision, and the empire he built from a struggling steel company into a global corporation worth billions. To the world, he was a legend. To me, he was simply Dad. The version of him the public never saw was the man who insisted on making pancakes every Sunday morning, even though he burned them almost every time. He was the father who never missed my piano recitals, who taught me that a person's character mattered far more than the size of their bank account, and who used to tell me, the easiest way to lose yourself is to let money decide who you become. It was a lesson I never forgot. Maybe that's why, when I turned 18, I told him I didn't want anything to do with Carter Industries. I wanted to build a life that belonged to me, not one that had already been planned before I was even born. To my surprise, he didn't argue. He smiled. Then he hugged me and said, Good. If you ever come back, I want it to be because you chose to, not because you felt obligated. Those were the last words he ever said to me in person. A week later, I accepted a scholarship in Seattle and left New York behind. Our conversations became shorter as the years passed. He was constantly traveling. I was busy building my own career as an investigative financial analyst. We still called each other on birthdays. We still exchanged Christmas gifts. But somewhere along the way, we stopped talking about the things that really mattered. Then, 3 weeks ago, I got a phone call that changed everything. My father had died from what doctors described as a sudden heart attack while working late in his office. He was 68 years old. The funeral was private, quick, almost strangely efficient. The board of directors assured everyone that Richard Carter had left behind a detailed succession plan and that the company would continue operating without interruption. I believed them. Why wouldn't I? Grief has a way of making you accept the first explanation you're given. After the funeral, I packed my suitcase and planned to return home. Then my father's attorney called. There is one final matter that must be handled in person. I assumed it was paperwork, a bank account, maybe a family property I had forgotten about. Instead, he calmly informed me that my father had named me the sole owner and chairwoman of Carter Industries, a company I had never worked for, a company I had deliberately avoided my entire adult life. I laughed because I thought it had to be some kind of mistake. It wasn't. 48 hours later, I found myself standing in front of Carter Industries' towering headquarters, wondering why my father had chosen me over executives with decades of experience. I kept telling myself there had to be a reason. I just didn't realize. Some people were willing to do absolutely anything to make sure I never discovered what that reason was. The elevator climbed in complete silence. 38 floors. 38 chances to convince myself the old janitor had simply been grieving the loss of the man he'd worked for most of his life. But the deeper I thought about it, the less his warnings sounded like the rambling of an old man. It sounded rehearsed, almost as if he'd been waiting for me. The elevator chimed. The doors slid open. Waiting outside were 12 people dressed in perfectly tailored suits. Every single one of them smiled. Not one of those smiles reached their eyes. The man standing in the center stepped forward first. He looked to be in his early 60s, with silver hair, a navy suit, and the kind of confidence that only came from spending decades in boardrooms. "Miss Carter," he said warmly, extending his hand. "I'm William Donovan, Chief Executive Officer. On behalf of everyone at Carter Industries, we're deeply sorry for your loss." I shook his hand. His grip was firm, almost too firm. One by one, the others introduced themselves. Chief Financial Officer, Chief Legal Counsel, Head of Operations, Chief Technology Officer, Vice Presidents, Board Members. The people my father had trusted enough to help build one of the largest manufacturing companies in America. Or at least, that was what I believed. William gestured toward a pair of massive oak doors. "Everyone is waiting." As the doors opened, I stepped into the boardroom. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Manhattan. A polished walnut table stretched almost the entire length of the room. At the far end, my father's chair remained empty. For just a moment, no one spoke. Then William cleared his throat. "Richard Carter dedicated 43 years of his life to this company." The executives lowered their heads. Some looked genuinely emotional. Others seemed more interested in watching me than mourning him. "His absence will be felt for generations," William continued. "And today, we honor his final wishes." The company's attorney stood and placed a thick leather folder in front of me. "Miss Carter," he said, "inside are the documents officially transferring ownership and voting control of Carter Industries into your name." Everyone looked at me, waiting, watching, expecting. I remembered the janitor's voice. "Don't sign anything." My fingers rested on the pen. Instead of picking it up, I closed the folder. The room became unusually quiet. William forced a smile. "Is something wrong?" "I have a few questions." Several executives exchanged quick glances. Barely noticeable, but I caught them. "My father spent decades preparing executives to run this company," I said. "Why would he suddenly leave everything to someone who never even worked here?" William answered immediately. "Because you were his daughter." That's not an answer. The silence grew heavier. The attorney adjusted his glasses. "Richard believed leadership could be learned." I wasn't asking what he believed. I leaned forward. I was asking why. For the first time, William hesitated. Only for a second, but it was enough. He looked toward the company's legal counsel before answering. It was simply his decision. Simply. The word echoed in my mind. Nothing about this felt simple. My father never made billion-dollar decisions without explaining them. Never. A knock interrupted the meeting. The assistant entered carrying coffee. As she placed a cup beside me, she accidentally dropped a folded note onto the table. Her eyes widened. I'm so sorry." She reached for it, but I picked it up first. The handwriting was rushed, uneven. Only 6 words were written across the page. "Your father trusted the wrong people." I looked up. The assistant was gone. No one else seemed to have noticed. Or maybe they were pretending not to notice. I quietly slipped the note into my jacket. The meeting continued. Financial reports, quarterly earnings, expansion plans, numbers, charts, forecasts. Everything sounded polished. Perfect. Too perfect. Then one sentence changed everything. William smiled confidently. As Richard always said, transparency builds trust. My stomach tightened. My father never said that. His favorite line was different. I had heard it since I was a little girl. Trust isn't built by transparency. It's built by accountability. The executives nodded in agreement. No one corrected him. Either they had forgotten the man they claimed to admire, or they had never known him at all. That's when I realized something that sent a chill down my spine. These people weren't protecting my father's legacy. They were protecting something else. And whatever it was worth lying for. The meeting ended almost an hour later. One by one, the executives gathered their folders, offered polite condolences, and walked out of the boardroom. William Donovan was the last to leave. He stopped at the doorway and gave me a reassuring smile. "I know today has been overwhelming, Olivia. Take all the time you need. Your father's office has been left exactly as he wanted it." Exactly as he wanted it. There was something about those words that didn't sit right with me. The door closed behind him. For the first time since I'd arrived, I was alone. I walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan. Thousands of people hurried through the streets below, completely unaware that somewhere inside this building, someone had already lied to me more than once. I took the folded note from my jacket. Your father trusted the wrong people. There was no signature, no explanation, just 6 words that refused to leave my mind. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. I turned. A young woman stood nervously in the doorway. She looked to be in her late 20s, wearing a navy blazer with an employee badge clipped to her pocket. I'm sorry to bother you, Miss Carter, she said quietly. My name is Emma. I was your father's executive assistant. Her voice trembled, not with fear, with grief. I'm so sorry for your loss. Thank you. She hesitated before speaking again. There was something your father wanted you to have. My pulse quickened. She reached into her bag and carefully placed an old brass key on the conference table. He told me that if anything ever happened to him, I was to give this only to you. I stared at the key. What does it open? I don't know. You never asked? He told me. She swallowed hard. That the fewer people who knew, the safer everyone would be. Before I could ask another question, hurried footsteps echoed down the hallway. Emma's face instantly lost its color. They're coming. Who? The board. Without another word, she hurried away. Seconds later, William Donovan walked back into the room with 2 other executives. His smile returned as if nothing had happened. There you are, he said cheerfully. I thought you might like a tour of the executive floor. I quietly slipped the brass key into my pocket. Actually, I replied, I'd rather see my father's office first. For the briefest moment, William's smile disappeared. It lasted less than a second, but I saw it. Of course, he answered. Follow me. The hallway leading to my father's office was lined with framed photographs celebrating decades of Carter Industries' success. There were groundbreaking ceremonies, award presentations, charity events, magazine covers. My father appeared in nearly every picture, until one frame caught my attention. I stopped walking. The photograph showed my father standing beside William Donovan at a ribbon-cutting ceremony 10 years earlier. Both men were smiling, but someone else's face had been carefully cut out of the picture. Only a shoulder remained. The rest had been removed with almost surgical precision. What happened here? I asked. William barely looked at it. Old damage. It doesn't look accidental. We've been meaning to replace it. He kept walking. Too quickly, almost as if he didn't want me studying it. I followed him without another word. My father's office stood at the end of a private hallway. The heavy walnut door looked untouched. William unlocked it. As promised, he said, exactly as he left it. The room smelled of leather, old books, and cedarwood. Family photographs still sat neatly on the shelves. His reading glasses rested beside an unfinished legal pad. A coffee mug sat on the desk, half full. It looked less like an office someone had abandoned, and more like a room someone expected to return to. I slowly walked around the desk. Everything appeared perfectly organized. Too perfectly. My father wasn't messy, but he wasn't this meticulous either. Then I noticed something strange. A faint rectangular outline in the dust. Something had been sitting on the bookshelf for years. Something heavy. Now it was gone. I turned toward William. What's missing? He frowned. I'm sorry. There was something here. I don't know what you mean. My father kept something on this shelf. William shrugged. I couldn't tell you. His answer came too quickly. Just then, my eyes landed on the bookshelf itself. One book wasn't aligned with the others. It stuck out by barely an inch. I reached toward it. William took a sudden step forward. That's just an old accounting manual. His reaction told me everything. I ignored him and pulled the book. A quiet mechanical click echoed through the office. Part of the bookshelf slid open. Behind it was a hidden safe. No one spoke. William's face turned completely white, very slowly. I looked at him. You said this office was exactly as my father left it. He couldn't answer, because if he knew about the safe, he had lied. And if he didn't know about it, then someone else had been searching this office long before I arrived. Either way, the biggest secret in Carter Industries had just revealed itself, and I had the only key that might unlock it. The brass key felt heavier than it should have. William Donovan stood frozen beside me, staring at the hidden safe as though he had just seen a ghost. For the first time since I'd arrived at Carter Industries, the man who always seemed to have the perfect answer had none. I looked from the safe to the key resting in my palm. "You've never seen this before?" I asked. His eyes met mine. "No," he answered too quickly, the same way he'd answered every question that made him uncomfortable. I walked toward the safe. William stepped in front of me. "Olivia." His voice had changed. It was no longer warm or welcoming. It sounded nervous. "I don't think opening that safe today is a good idea." I folded my arms. "Interesting. What is?" "You weren't worried about me signing legal documents worth billions of dollars." I held up the brass key. "But suddenly you're worried about what's inside my father's safe." He forced a laugh. "I'm only suggesting we wait until legal counsel is present. This office belongs to me now. It isn't about ownership." "No," I replied quietly. "I think it is." Before he could stop me, I slid the key into the lock. It fit perfectly. The lock clicked. A deep metallic sound echoed through the office. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then I slowly opened the heavy steel door. Inside, there wasn't a stack of money. There wasn't a will. There wasn't even the mysterious red ledger the janitor had mentioned. Instead, there were only three things. A thick brown envelope, an old digital voice recorder, and a framed family photograph. I frowned. The photograph had clearly been taken years earlier. I recognized myself immediately. I looked about 12 years old. My father stood behind me with one hand on my shoulder, but someone else stood beside us. A woman. Her face had been carefully burned away. Not torn, not scratched, burned. Someone had deliberately destroyed only her identity. A chill ran through me. "Who is she?" William stared at the picture. "I've never seen that photograph before." I looked at him. He wasn't lying. At least, not this time. I picked up the envelope. Across the front, in my father's unmistakable handwriting, were 7 words. "Only open if you trust no one." My heart pounded. I opened it anyway. Inside was a single handwritten letter. The first line stole the air from my lungs. "Olivia, if you're reading this, it means I was right to be afraid." I read faster. "Someone inside this company has spent years stealing from us." I thought I knew who it was. Then I discovered something far worse. The person I suspected wasn't the one giving the orders. My hands trembled. Someone cleared their throat behind me. I turned sharply. Emma stood in the doorway. Her face was pale. "Close the safe," she whispered. "What?" "They're checking the security cameras." I immediately shut the safe. Emma stepped inside and quietly locked the office door. "You don't have much time. Tell me what's going on." She looked at the envelope in my hands. "So he really left it." "You knew?" "I knew he was hiding something." "What?" "He never told me." She hesitated. "But 3 days before he died." Her voice cracked. "He told me that if anything happened to him, I should never trust anyone on the executive floor." My stomach tightened. "Not even William?" She slowly shook her head. "No one." A loud knock echoed through the office. 3 sharp knocks. Everyone froze. William looked toward the door. Emma's breathing became uneven. Another knock, this time louder. William forced a smile. "Probably security." Emma grabbed my wrist. "They're not here to protect you." She quietly pointed toward a second door hidden behind a bookshelf. "I'll distract them." "What about you?" "I'll be fine." I wasn't sure she believed that herself. She opened the hidden door. Before stepping through, she looked back at me. "If your father trusted anyone." She took a deep breath. "It wasn't because they worked here." Then she disappeared. A second later, the office door burst open. 2 corporate security officers entered. Behind them, William Donovan. He looked directly at the open bookshelf, then at me. His expression was calm. Too calm. "Olivia," he said with a polite smile. "We've got a small problem." I forced myself to remain still. "What kind of problem?" He held up a printed photograph. It showed the hidden safe. Someone had been watching the office all along, and they knew. I had already opened it. William never took his eyes off me. The smile on his face was calm, controlled, but I could see it now. It wasn't confidence. It was calculation. He placed the photograph of the hidden safe on my father's desk. "Security flagged unusual activity in this office," he said. Imagine my surprise when I learned someone had opened a compartment no one was supposed to know existed. I looked at the photograph, then back at him. If no one was supposed to know it existed. I paused. How did security know exactly where to point the camera? The room fell silent. One of the security officers glanced at William. Just for a second. It was enough. William recovered almost instantly. "We monitor every executive office." I shook my head. "No." I slid the burned family photograph across the desk. "You've lied to me since I walked into this building." His expression hardened. "My father never said the quote you used in the boardroom. You lied about knowing this office. You lied about the missing item on the bookshelf. And now you're lying about the cameras." The warmth disappeared from his face. "So let me ask you one simple question." I leaned forward. "Who was the woman in this photograph?" For the first time, William looked genuinely shaken. "I don't know." I reached for the digital voice recorder. "If that's true." I pressed play. Static filled the room. Then, my father's voice. Older, tired, but unmistakable. "If you're hearing this, then I've run out of time." No one moved. Not even the security guards. "Olivia, there are people inside Carter Industries who believe money can erase the truth." William slowly closed his eyes. "For months, I've been investigating millions of dollars that disappeared from our charitable foundation." My heart pounded. I followed the money. A long pause. And discovered something much worse than theft. The room was completely silent. Someone has been using Carter Industries to hide illegal payments through shell companies. I looked directly at William. His face had turned pale. But then, the recording continued. "The person responsible isn't the one you'll suspect first." I froze. William froze too. "If you're listening carefully," my father's voice became weaker. "Look at the signatures." The recording ended. A click. Silence. William let out a slow breath. Then, to my surprise, he laughed. Not loudly. Quietly. Almost with relief. "You finally understand." "What?" "I'm not the man your father was trying to expose." Every instinct told me he was lying. Until he slowly reached into his jacket. The security officers immediately tensed. Instead of pulling out a weapon, he removed an old employee identification card. The photograph showed a much younger William standing beside my father. And beside them, the same woman whose face had been burned out of the family photograph. Her name read, Sarah Mitchell. William gently placed the badge on the desk. "Sarah wasn't just your father's employee." He looked directly at me. "She was his younger sister." My mind went blank. My father never had a sister. "That's what someone wanted you to believe." He walked toward the window. "Sarah uncovered the financial fraud years before your father did." "What happened to her?" William's voice grew quiet. "She disappeared." The word echoed through the office. "Your father never stopped looking for her." I remembered the burned photograph. Someone hadn't erased a stranger. They had erased family. Then another thought struck me. The letter. I quickly unfolded my father's handwritten note again. This time, I noticed something I had completely missed. The first letter of every paragraph had been written slightly darker than the others. I wrote them down. R. E. D. L. E. D. G. E. R. Red ledger. It wasn't just something the janitor had shouted. It was the final clue my father had hidden for me. I looked at William. "Where is it?" Before he could answer, the lights across the entire executive floor went out. Darkness swallowed the office. Emergency alarms began to sound. Somewhere in the hallway, a gunshot echoed. Then another. The security officers instinctively reached for their radios. Nothing. Only static. A terrified scream rang out from somewhere beyond the office doors. William turned toward me. His face had completely changed. "Olivia," he whispered. "They've realized you know too much." The office doors suddenly shook with a violent impact. Someone was trying to force their way inside, and whoever it was, wasn't coming to ask questions. The office door crashed open. Two masked men rushed inside. One of the security officers reached for his weapon. A gunshot echoed through the room. The bullet shattered the glass wall behind us. Everyone dropped to the floor. William grabbed my arm. "Move." For a split second, I hesitated. Just minutes earlier, I had believed he was the man responsible for everything. Now, he had thrown himself between me and a bullet. We sprinted through the hidden doorway behind my father's bookshelf. It led into a narrow maintenance corridor that hadn't been used in years. Emergency lights flickered overhead. Somewhere behind us, footsteps echoed through the hallway. They were following us. "They're trying to destroy the evidence." William said between breaths. What evidence? The red ledger. We reached a rusted freight elevator. William pressed the call button. Nothing. The power's out. So what now? He pointed toward a metal staircase. Your father built a second archive beneath the original headquarters. Almost no one knows it exists. We hurried downstairs. Each level grew darker, older. Dust covered every handrail. The air smelled of concrete and machine oil. Finally, we reached a heavy steel door. Above it hung a faded brass sign. Archive B. William pushed it open. Rows of filing cabinets stretched into the darkness. Boxes filled every shelf. My father hadn't hidden treasure. He had hidden history. I searched through cabinet after cabinet until I noticed one drawer with a small red ribbon tied around the handle. Inside was a thick leather book. Its cover was faded. Across the front, handwritten in black ink, were two words. Red Ledger. I slowly opened it. Every page contained handwritten dates, account numbers, names, and signatures. Millions of dollars had been moved through fake charities and shell companies over nearly 15 years. Each transaction connected to one person. But it wasn't William. It wasn't the board. The same signature appeared over and over again. Margaret Sloan. I froze. Margaret Sloan, the company's chief legal counsel. The quiet woman who had barely spoken during the board meeting. The person no one had questioned because she never tried to control the room. She had hidden in plain sight. William stared at the pages. I knew someone was directing it, he whispered. I never imagined it was her. Then another folded document slipped from the ledger. It was a birth certificate. The mother's name read Sarah Mitchell. The father's name had been left blank. My hands trembled. Attached to it was another letter from my father. Olivia, if you've reached this page, then you've already discovered who Sarah was. She wasn't only my sister. She was the one who exposed the conspiracy. When she refused to stay silent, they made her disappear. I spent 20 years searching for her. I failed. Don't make the same mistake I did. A tear rolled down my cheek. My father hadn't been protecting a company. He had been trying to protect his family. Suddenly, slow applause echoed through the archive. We turned. Margaret Sloan stepped out of the shadows. Perfectly dressed. Perfectly calm. She wasn't alone. 3 armed men stood behind her. I was wondering how long it would take you, she said. She looked directly at me. Richard always underestimated how patient I could be. You killed him. She smiled. I didn't have to. He trusted the wrong medication. The words hit me like a punch. You poisoned him. I merely changed the dosage. William lunged toward her. The armed men immediately raised their weapons. Don't. Margaret never flinched. You've already lost. I tightened my grip on the red ledger. No. I quietly reached into my pocket. What are you doing? Margaret asked. I smiled for the first time that day. My father taught me something. What's that? Never walk into a negotiation without insurance. I held up my phone. The screen displayed one message. Live recording, shared with FBI Financial Crimes Division. Margaret's confidence vanished. You recorded everything? Every word. In the distance, police sirens began to echo through the building. Then came another sound. Boots. Dozens of them. The archive doors burst open. Federal agents. Nobody moved. Within seconds, Margaret's guards dropped their weapons. She looked at me with pure hatred as agents placed handcuffs around her wrists. As they led her away, she stopped beside me. You think you won. I looked her in the eyes. I know my father did. Months later, the investigation became national news. The Red Ledger exposed years of corruption. Billions of dollars were recovered. Dozens of executives were arrested. My father's name was cleared. A memorial was built in his honor. As for me, I accepted the role of chairwoman, not to preserve an empire, but to rebuild it the way my father always intended. Before leaving his office for the final time that evening, I placed the burned family photograph back on his desk. Beside it, I placed a new photograph, one where every face remained exactly as it should, because the truth can be buried for years, but sooner or later, it always finds its way home.